Welcome to Out and About Season 1, Episode 2. I am still your host, Janet Michael. That's got to be a good thing. Today, we are going to talk to you about container gardening. I have a ton of questions. Mark is back. Sari is back. We've even added Paula to the crew. We're broadcasting from the River 953, so you get a little sneak peek at the radio station when we're all done. Follow us along. So Mark, I am so excited that you agreed to come back for a second episode. So I guess I'm not as horrible of a gardener as I thought I was. So thank you. Mark, I want you to take a minute and tell me a little bit about what you do at the Extension office. Give all of your contact information and tell everybody a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Certainly, Janet. My name is Mark Sutphin, and I work with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Virginia Cooperative Extension is a partnership between Virginia Tech and Virginia State University, our two land-grant universities here in Virginia. And so our mission is to extend some of that land-grant research-based information. The contact information for me would be my office number, 540-665-5699. Or you can reach us and find all the local offices on the Extension website at ext.vt.edu.
Okay, so in our last episode, I joked about being able to kill a plastic plant. When you and Sari were here months ago when we started planning this, we had a whole conversation about these little tiny plants and potted things that you can buy at convenience stores and grocery stores. So this is my proof that I really can kill just about anything. Although I will say, Sari did tell me that it doesn't have watering holes in the bottom. So yeah, I don't guess you can save this.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's any hope for this, Janet. And as you pointed out, the mistake that was made is oftentimes you need to check a container and make sure that it has adequate drainage. The number one killer of many of our potted plants is either too much water or too little water. The same is the case in the landscape. The likely issue with this one is there was no drainage and it probably sat in water and the roots rotted. So unfortunately, you can toss this out in the compost pile and enjoy the container for another use.
Thank you. Okay, so here's my next question, because this is kind of my pride and joy. As much as I killed the last thing, this has been my project. The husband is in charge of everything else outside, but I bought these almost dead from one of the big stores and brought it home, have put it in this pot. I've got 3 of them at home. Can I take this inside over the winter and set it in the kitchen window, put it in our sunroom? Will it live forever? Or when they say annual, do they really mean it's only gonna live for a year no matter how well I take care of it?
Typically in our area, they are used as annuals out in the landscape. In this case, it's in a container and doing quite well, especially considering that you've revived it from looking poorly. And begonias will overwinter inside. You can take them in. If you have a nice sunny location, probably a south-facing window, maybe do okay in an east-facing window. And they may get a little tall and leggy due to the reduced light in the wintertime. And begonias are great. You can just pinch them back once they get leggy, and that will cause them to flush out some more and be fuller and thicker when you get to set it out in the spring next year.
So can you tell all of my flowers match all of my outfits? Because it's kind of how I live my life. So I love daisies. These I picked up and love them. However, I've got a couple of questions. It looks awfully green. There aren't a lot of blooms coming up, but it looks like I could make a salad out of this plant. So I'm not sure if there's something I'm supposed to be doing to it or whether this is kind of how it is and what's gonna happen. The other argument that I need you to settle between my husband and I is this. I did not take it out of its original pot. It came like this. I bought it because it was in this and because of the colors. Should I take it out of the original and actually pot it in the pot? Or can I leave it just like this? I'm not gonna tell you which one of us thinks we should do the other. I'm gonna let you settle the argument for everybody else. So what do you think?
All right, this is a beautiful Gerbera daisy, and the vegetative portion is certainly doing quite well. It looks very healthy, and the first thing that I would do is take it out of the container and just take a look at the root ball, look at the roots. There are plenty of roots in here. They're nice and white, which means they're healthy and doing well. They're not soggy and full of root rot, so that's a good sign. It's not overly root bound with circling roots, although it's starting to get full. And with your question about the amount of vegetation, it may be time to upsize it to a larger pot to allow it room to grow and hopefully generate some more flower production for you. And the great debate that's going on in your house about leaving it in this original plastic container versus putting it back in the decorative pot, my suggestion would be to leave it in this container, although at this point you probably want to upsize it. But the benefit again is that whole drainage issue. This decorative container does not have as many drain holes, and so it would likely sit wetter in this decorative container. It's got a raised portion in here to allow the plastic production container to sit on top of and drain well. So it has been thriving the way you've been keeping it. So that would be the answer to the debate.
That means I win the argument. So I am very excited. I can't wait to go home and explain all of this to my husband that a professional said I was right and he was wrong. So Paula Brownlee, you are one of our master gardeners. Tell me a little bit about how you get to be a master gardener. Did you always have a love of gardening?
All my life I have gardened, starting with my grandmother in England and then my father in England. But I was always such an amateur, I really didn't know much about it. Then I heard about the Master Gardener program and Virginia Cooperative Extension, and I actually signed up for the Master Gardener program. And I was delighted to be in a wonderful community of gardeners, the Master Gardeners.
So I've always wanted to be a gardener. I'm not sure that I am quite there yet, but the one thing that has always drawn me is herbs. I want to be able to eat and cook with what I'm growing. So I'm hoping that you're going to be able to give me some tips, whether I'm putting something in the garden, whether I'm putting it in a container, and how I'm going to be able to keep that year-round so that I can enjoy it year-round.
Herbs are a lovely way to start gardening, and you'll spread to other things. I would suggest if you're starting, it's a very good idea to go to a big store and get some little pots like this. Or if you actually have some things in your vegetable garden or in your flower beds, you might want to do what I call prowl the garden. And that means you go around, as I did last night, and I prowled around my vegetable garden to see what little volunteers I could see. So prowl around and see if something is volunteered. Sometimes you can see little dill plants because they seed themselves. And so those are all good candidates for you to plant in a container with a hole for drainage, and you've heard about the importance of that. And you will best use potting soil, and you want to look and see what kind of potting soil there is, and you'll hear more about that later in this broadcast. So you want to be sure that the potting soil that you fill the container with is moist, is damp already. There's a terrible mistake if you have a dry bag of potting soil and you pour it in and you pour the water on and it all beads on the top because the water doesn't sink in. So you get it in the bag, or I have a bucket at home and I just stir it up like a pastry dough or something, except you have to be more delicate with pastry dough. I'm going to say when you transplant, you don't want too much foliage, too much drawing of nutrients, because it's having a hard time with that small little root ball, because I've kind of wounded it by making the root ball smaller. So you're going to actually, this is very hard to look at, I'm going to cut off all that top part. So you really want to plant only the top part of your herb or your flower or whatever it is, and you particularly want to cut off flowers. It hurts you, but at least in the case of basil, and this one I would take all the way down to here. I'm not going to do it since this is a beautiful plant, but then I always strip those leaves and use them in tonight's salad. Be patient, keep it watered, and in a couple of weeks you'll have lovely new plants all ready to go in the winter.
So we're here now with Sari Karp, and I have an age-old question. I thought dirt was dirt, but apparently that's not the case when it comes to planting in containers and even in the ground.
Dirt isn't really just dirt. The dirt from the ground around here is mostly clay, as you've discovered if you've ever tried to dig in it. And clay is not great for most plants. The dirt from the ground, even if it weren't clay, will also have bugs and pests and microorganisms that can harm your plants. So what you do not want to do is fill your container with this nasty clay buggy dirt, because your plants are stuck in this tiny little pot and they can't spread their roots to get better dirt or better soil, as we call it, and more nutrition for themselves. So you want to give them the best chance with the best soil and use proper potting soil in your container.
So then, about potting soil, can I reuse it from season to season and pot to pot? Because that's another argument in my house.
Sort of. You shouldn't reuse it just as it is. First of all, if it's been outside, you want to be careful that it hasn't developed mold and it hasn't gotten those bugs and those nasty microorganisms. Secondly, if you have the kind with fertilizer in it, bear in mind that that fertilizer only lasts for a couple of months. So that is gone, and you will need to add more fertilizer and particularly more organic material, which is essentially compost. So you can mix your soil into your compost and make yourself a nice fresh batch with a lot of compost added, but still reusing your old soil, and then use that again the next season.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Out and About. I hope you learned a little something about container gardening. Next month, our topic is going to be trees. So if you've got any questions about trees in your yard, about transplanting, about putting in new ones, or even pruning, make sure you contact us here at The River. You can email us at outandabout@theriver953.com. I'm Janet Michael. Thanks for watching.